Hey everyone, this is Adam Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Today we are going to take a look at both Mercury and Venus turning direct in the sign of Pisces. Of course, they are doing so in close proximity to both the North Node and Saturn, also in the late degrees of Pisces. So given this shift of direction in late Pisces, we are going to do some horoscopes for all 12 signs, give you a sense of where these retrogrades have been and what topics they've been evoking in your life through your natal chart, and where they might be heading now, given that they are turning direct. So that will be our focus for today. Before we get into it, remember to like and subscribe. It really helps our channel to grow. If you listen regularly and you're not yet subscribed, it's free to do so. Give us that thumbs up. Transcripts of any of these daily talks can be found on the website, which is nightlightastrology.com. I am very pleased to announce that our Year 1 course, Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic, begins again on June 22nd and is now open for enrollment. So when you go to the Nightlight page, click on courses, go to the first year course. By the way, if you are brand spanking new to astrology, you may want to start with about 10 hours of pre-recordings on astrology for beginners. That's just sort of a very, very, very basic course for people who are just getting started. But for most people who have a little bit of a background, start with our first year course. Scroll down, you can learn more about it. There's 30 classes on the year, all held by webinar live. I teach those classes live, and then they are recorded. So if you can't follow along with the live webinars, you can always follow along with the recordings through our class website. There are breakout study sessions led by tutors, an interactive group forum that is staffed by our tutors as well. Tons of bonus material, and many people take this as a part of a professional certification track. We have 3 years worth of curriculum to that end. We also have a 1-year horary course, master course series, tons of material for people who are studying astrology seriously, wanting to practice for other people. But also many people take our programs just for the sake of their own spiritual enrichment. See the early bird pricing payments at the bottom. Those are available till May 15th to save on the cost of the course. After May 15th, those aren't available, so be sure to take advantage of those now. We also do have need-based tuition, so if you're someone who could use a little help, we have a sliding scale that you can work within at a discount. Well below our sale prices for people who are hurting financially and need a little help. We understand everyone's got a different story. We want to make sure that this sacred, beautiful topic is available to people of all socioeconomic backgrounds. So on that note, next week I'll be posting videos about all of the various features of the course. At the end of every video, you'll see like a little bonus video that's tagged on, so that if you stick around after content, you can learn more about it. The only other thing to mention is that we are starting our masterclass series. Our spring masterclass series begins today, and you can check that out on the masterclass page. This is for people who already have a little bit of a background in Hellenistic astrology. We started the year looking at the 1st, 9th, and 5th houses. Now we're looking at the 10th, 2nd, and 6th houses as the work for which you were born. This is a 3-part series of lectures and conversations on the topic with some chart work that we do together in class. So if you are someone who wants a little bit of advanced content, we're looking at the ancient Indian philosophical meanings of the houses in this series. It's been a really good one so far. And then remember, yesterday you guys met my wife, Ashley, who is a clinical herbalist. And whoops. See if I can get there. Here we go. Here's her page. She came and visited us and talked about goddesses and Jupiter in Cancer. Her Herbal Foundations apprenticeship is open for enrollment right now as well. So if you missed that yesterday, it's skyhouseherbs.com. Okay, on that note, thanks for bearing with me through some announcements, and let us get into it now. Let us turn our attention to the real-time clock. All right. So here we have, you can see in the 11th house of this transit wheel that I have up, look at that gathering of planets in the sign of Pisces. We have the planet Mercury, who has just recently turned direct, the beginning of this past week. We have that Mercury closely conjoined with the North Node of the Moon. We have Saturn closely conjoined the North Node of the Moon. And we also have Venus closely conjoined Saturn and the North Node of the Moon. And Venus is turning direct over the weekend. So what I want to do today is just focus on the whole sign house of Pisces through all 12 horoscopes. I recommend listening for your rising sign, but if you listen normally to your sun sign, that's fine too. I always recommend the rising, because if you use whole sign houses, as we encourage people to do on this channel, it's a Hellenistic astrology channel that utilizes whole sign houses, then that horoscope, the rising sign horoscope, will correspond with the actual transits to your natal chart, which is the most accurate when it comes to tracking transits, in my humble opinion. Anyway, you can listen to whatever you want, though. Here is the screen. Let's get it rolling. We're going to look, starting with Aries and running through all 12 signs. What I'm going to do is just focus on those planets that are in the sign of Pisces. So I'm going to actually remove everything else from our perspective except for those 4 planets, so we can just kind of look at the chart from their perspective. And what I'm going to do is just kind of pose some questions for meditation that are the same for everybody, and then remind you of the topics of the house, so that way you can make a connection between the retrograde processes that have been happening as well as the topics of the house they've been happening in. So let's get started with the sign of Aries. We're looking at some retrogrades that have been taking place in your 12th house. The turn direct means that a process is completing. So what have you learned? That's a simple question you can ask. What revisions have you been asked to make? What changes of circumstance, reversals of plot, or changes of direction have you been experiencing in your life due to the things that are coming up for you that were previously unseen, hidden, existing in a kind of blind spot or unconscious? Retrogrades in this house for an Aries rising should be bringing things to light that were unseen. Influences within yourself, or influences in the world around you that you're becoming more aware of. The kinds of things that maybe undermine versus support you that you weren't as aware of, now you're becoming more aware of. Changes in thought, perception, or behavior that reflect a process of becoming more conscious is really what the 12th house is all about. So if you're in Aries, you might ask yourself, what unconscious material or what awareness am I starting to develop or receive that I wasn't previously able to receive or see? That would be one basic way of looking at things. So we move on to the sign of Taurus next, where these retrogrades have been taking place in the 11th house. Now these planets are turning direct in the 11th house. So what have you learned? What changes or reflections or revisions, redirections, or let's call it a shift of plot or circumstance has been taking place or revealing itself through the 11th house, the place of groups, communities, friends, allies, supporters? What kinds of changes of plot or circumstance are taking place with respect to who you align with, or what communities or groups of people you feel are best to associate with? Changes in this house through several retrogrades, North Node, Saturn, all coming together, can also be about a process of completing certain kinds of social contracts and shifting your focus or direction into new kinds of social contracts. Social meaning the colleagues that you work with, the allies that you partner with in business or out in the world, the groups and communities you feel most identified with, how you feel like you fit in or stand apart from others in communal dynamics. For Tauruses, there is a shift or a change that's been happening in that house. As a Taurus rising myself, I can't help but reflect on the fact that as these retrogrades came into the 11th house, I started personally taking on the challenge of trying to get a little bit more creative with the titling of my videos, to be what I felt was like a little bit more creative, but hopefully not too sensational. Like kind of trying to ride that line a little bit more. And we had we had several videos like sort of blow up, and we had to go viral. And we talked about Saturn dying, and we talked about Kings dying, and the videos went viral. We got like 5,000-6,000 new subscribers overnight. It's pretty wild. But that was a shift within a community dynamic and with respect to a larger community of people. And that was really interesting for me is I had several invites to collaborate with some of my colleagues that I haven't collaborated with before. So it was kind of cool. That's a basic example of the 11th house that I can use as a Taurus rising. But for all of us, if you're a Taurus, like where has the shift in social dynamics and community work and colleagues been taking place? There's a meaningful change of focus or direction happening in that area right now. So let's move on to Gemini rising. For Geminis, this gathering of Piscean planets and the retrogrades of both Mercury and Venus have been positioned in your 10th house. That is the place that is associated with your work environment, your vocation, your career, the role you play and are known for, your reputation in the world, your public facing self. Now, again, I mentioned this in most videos, but any of these things can apply when people are retired. It's just how do you continue to engage with the civic and social arena that you are still a part of, even when you're retired. So, changes with respect to your role in the workplace, your focus, your skills, the projects you've been involved with, the people in the workplace, especially with Venus retrograde there. What kinds of workplace relationships have been changing? The redirection of these planets in direct motion, especially with Saturn kind of finishing its work there, really does also suggest that a long process of change in the workplace is culminating right now. That can mean that a change or shift of values or direction or core relationships and how they play a role in work is also changing. But that's where it's located, really in the place that has to do with your vertical movement, like promotions and achievements, and also just the general sense of what you feel called to do and what you feel called to contribute to that social world that we all have to meet in some way. Well, that's for Geminis, that's where everything's been focused. And we move forward to Cancers, and this gathering of Piscean planets has been taking place in the ninth house. The ninth house was called God, and it was the place of the joy of the sun and the place of illumination and wisdom, philosophy, morality, religion, good karma that comes from being of good faith and morality, even in the Indian tradition. That's fascinating. For Cancers, I can't help but wonder, how has the subject of the feminine, the sacred feminine, the goddess, the relationship between something like intimacy, sexuality, sensuality, the Venusian side of things been playing a role in the development of your faith or your spiritual journey? I think of my wife, who's a Cancer rising, who has, during these retrogrades, as well as Mars in Cancer's long stay, she's gotten really deeply immersed in the study of ancient goddesses. That tracks, right? As soon as she started getting into it, it was not surprising to me, given the North Node moving into that house and Saturn culminating and Mercury and Venus retrograding back in. Started painting goddesses, really beautiful. But it's also about the change of direction generally with respect to learning, teachers, your faith path, your development of your convictions and beliefs and views, and the embodiment of your values philosophically. And with Venus there, there's a real sensual, physical, feminine dimension to this transit that is probably asking to be incorporated. So, those are some things to consider if you're a Cancer rising. If you are a Leo rising, of course, these planets go into the eighth house, which is a little bit of a difficult house. The main reason that I consider it to be a difficult house is that this is a place that is associated with the karmic give and take of our relationships. In every relationship, there's a kind of contract, and we're locked into that contract like we're locked into paying rent when you sign the contract, a lease on an apartment or something. You owe rent every month. We owe things to people that we enter into relationships with, and they owe things to us. Now, obviously, most of our relationships are not rooted in a transactional exchange. We love and care for each other. And that's certainly the hope, that whatever we may be transacting in relationships, that the basis of the relationship is care and love and dedication and friendship and devotion, nurturing something that is a soul level connection. But at the same time, there are transactions of values taking place. And this is to be explored right now for Leos, with these planets all changing direction, uh, working through retrogradation in the eighth house. What is being given? What is being taken? is there some need for revision about what's given and taken? Is there some need to revise the emotional or spiritual or even sexual or sensual dimensions of what is given and received in relationships? This is also just plainly about the possessions or values or money of partners or other people. This can also be about investments. And the eighth house can also be about death and things that we have to let go of, or facing various kinds of fear. Usually that those deaths are metaphorical, not literal. But in what ways are we being asked to allow things to end? Especially with Venus Saturn there, what soul contracts are coming to a space of ending or expiration? So a little heavier, weightier things going on for Leos, but also, clarifying your values and clarifying the agreements that we have with other souls. Um, Moving on to Virgo rising, we place these planets into the seventh house, the place of love and relationships. And with so many planets here, and two of them obviously finishing their retrograde in Mercury and Venus, one has to wonder what changes or revisions have been happening in the context of your various relationships. In what ways are you saying, this is who I am, and this is what I value, and therefore the relationship has to change to accommodate it? Or in what ways are other people saying that to you? Look, this is who I am, this is what I need, this is how I need you to accommodate me. That dialogue, that tension about self and other is heightened with these retrogrades in the seventh house. Now they're turning direct. So if there have been difficulties, the good news is that you're probably at a place where you're ready to integrate, take what's been learned, and move forward. Uh, I think there's also a question about what relationships are ready to commit at a deeper level, and or with Venus and Saturn so close together, what relationships are ready to be let go of or released. There is a kind of bittersweet quality to Venus Saturn in the seventh that might be a part of your experience right now as a Virgo, but it's also at a deeper level. It is about you know how we're growing and maturing in our relational depth and intimacy with other souls. So that's for Virgos. For Libras, we place these energies into the sixth house, another challenging house, but the retrogrades in this house may bring some clarity with respect to the kinds of things that you're working on. This is a house of labor and service and sacrifice. When retrogrades happen in this house, there's often a period of time where we have to reflect upon the energy we're expending and putting into things sacrificially. I can't think of one area of life that's meaningful to us that doesn't require um, a passionate taking on of difficulty for the thing we love, a willingness to sweat and toil and labor for the sake of learning something, becoming something, an element of sacrifice or service to the people or things that we love. And yet, this house is also associated with frustrations and things that we feel limit us, things that we have to deal with that are frustrating and difficult that we're not necessarily stoked to be suffering on behalf of. And so, right now, I just wonder for Libras, are you gaining some clarity with respect to who or what is worth the time, the energy, the effort, the sacrifice, and what isn't? A process of laboring with or being frustrated with something that's been stuck or delayed or has been providing you with setbacks could also be ready to conclude. Let's be over with it. Let's have it over. So for Libras, I also think about what relationships with Venus there retrograde, having been retrograde, what relationships are asking for what kinds of sacrifice or service. And the question about healthy boundaries with Venus and Saturn, healthy sacrifices versus unhealthy ones comes to my mind as well. All right, so let's move on. For Scorpios, we see these planets in Pisces finishing their retrogrades with North Node and Saturn in the fifth house. This is a place that's associated with creative fulfillment and joy and the experience of pleasure. So, this house was called the joy of Venus and the place of good fortune. With these planets retrograde and now turning direct, especially with an exalted Venus there, one has to wonder what kinds of creative acts right now are requiring a level of sacrifice and creative dedication. The Venus Saturn placement there suggests something that is creative and fulfilling, but requires a level of maturity, focus, discipline, and commitment. Maybe hard choices are having to be made on behalf of the creative um, direction that you're going in, or the creative acts or activities that you're very excited about, but you have to make some hard choices around them. This can also show up with respect to things around parenting and children, pregnancy. These planets shifting direction here may indicate shifts in the lives of your children that are meaningful, maybe a little bit, some coming of age moments or developmental leaps or stages that are being crossed. You can also just generally say, in what ways have you been invited to reflect upon the creative direction and fulfillment of your life and take it more seriously? And what are you going to do now that you've received these insights and wisdom about the creative direction you need to take? Are you gonna do it? All right. So Sagittarius comes in next, and these uh, planets in Pisces fall into the fourth house. This is the place of home, family, roots, foundations, and we look to our ancestors, our parents, our upbringing, as well as the domestic or private, intimate sphere of life. It's like your bedroom. It's the inner life that's not necessarily seen or shown to everyone in the world. Those people that we're very close to. Think of marriage, family, home, close friendships, in the private sphere of life. This can be about different kinds of domestic tensions, changes in domestic relationships, changes with respect to our living environment, where we're living, or how we seek to establish a sense of spiritual, psychological, and material foundation. Like, how do we establish a feeling of safety, a feeling of at homeness? These retrogrades have maybe been asking for an exploration or examination of those things. By looking also at our ancestral karma, we come to understand the difficulties of our current situations. So, a meaningful connection between current relationships and our ancestral past, our family, our upbringing, our family karma, our parents. All of these topics around home and family are the focus for Sagittarians. Now, for Capricorns, we see these planets in the third house, a place that was associated with the goddess and with the mind and with learning, but also culture, village, tribe, and your community, or the kind of karmic ecology that you're in on a day-to-day level. This is your neighborhood. If you live near a forest, it's the forest in the back, out back behind your house. Um, this kind of local sphere is interesting, because so much of who we are is subtly influenced by the environment around us. This is why the place is also associated with things like peers and siblings, and people who are like family or who are like common villagers around us. In the ancient world, it was looked at that way. So when I see a bunch of retrogrades here and the shift of direction and Saturn in the North Node, I wonder, how is the karmic environment of your life shifting or changing? What people, what shifts or changes in the psychic or physical environment are taking place? What reflections are you making with respect to the karmic habitat that you live in? Like, sometimes we start to see, oh, this part of the environment has an influence on me that's good, or this element of the environment isn't such a great influence. Also, relationships with siblings. So, relationships that are also with people in our environment, and meaningful changes in those relationships that reflect meaningful changes in our psychology. And a lot of this will happen through the kinds of communication dynamics that are taking place. It can also be things related to learning and the mind that are of a focus somehow. So you think about Mercury, Saturn, Venus. What kinds of things have you been learning? Have they been Venusian? What kinds of maybe skills, crafts that are Venusian in nature? I think of things like instruments, or weaving, or any kind of craft that has been a new part of your education. So anyway, for Capricorns in the third house, this has been the focus. For Aquarians, this grouping of Piscean planets comes into the second house. Second house is a place that is associated with work and resources, the development and cultivation of resources, the people that act as assets or aids, or in some ways like people we sort of lean on for support. And it's associated with money and the cultivation of resources that we have to support our life, including money, finances, business, etc. So it's one of the three work houses we're exploring in our masterclass series starting this week. And really, the second house also is reflective of our self-esteem insofar as our self-esteem is rooted in what we have developed or cultivate that we can call ours in terms of skills or material assets. So with retrogrades here, the question is really around what are we developing or cultivating? What resources do we need? How is our relationship to money changing, or business, finances, and material assets? The retrogrades offer some chance to redo or revise things in this area of life for Aquarians right now. Then, with respect to Pisceans, all of these planets in Pisces are taking place in your first house. This is pretty existential for Pisceans. We're talking about identity. We're talking about core characteristics of your personality. We're talking about your health and your body, and we're talking about your self-worth. And so these retrogrades reflect a change with respect to character, health, identity, your sense of who you are and what's important to you, or what makes you you. I like to think that these retrogrades can bring some real clarity and positive shifts with respect to self-esteem, self-care, health and vitality, or can just clarify for you your yeses and your nos, which may have a direct correlation with relationships or work or family or any other area of life. But the focus in the first house is on the process of individuation. What am I doing to be myself, change myself, accept myself, take care of myself? And the retrogrades have often offered some beautiful opportunities to deepen your self-knowledge and the process of becoming more conscious and whole. So for Pisceans, again, with Saturn there for several years, it's been a long process. And I think you'll be relieved to have Saturn out of the first house and moving into other areas that aren't quite as heavy personally. And you'll feel good for the work that you've done along the way. All right, well, we've gotten through all 12 whole signs. So I hope that that was useful for everybody. I will be back again on Monday. We've got some great content lined up for next week, so I'll be glad to see you then. Until then, I hope you have a great weekend. Bye, everyone.